You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Perth Property Show. My name's Trent Fleskens, your host as always. And this week we are bringing in the number one sales agent in Western Australia by listing sold at the moment. It's a young man who is now absolutely caning it in Kalgoorlie, of all places. It's Elliot Briers from Kalgoorlie Metro. Mate, thanks for coming back in. It's been a couple of years.
It has, mate. Thank you very much.
I think it's interesting for us to talk to you on a couple of fronts. What's the daily life of being the agent in WA who sells the most properties? That's a pretty interesting thing to talk about in terms of just an insight into the life into Elliot Briers, but also the world of Kalgoorlie, one that has benefited in a way that the town hasn't seen in decades, in a sustained way too. So there's two parts to the conversation. The first one, let's crack on quickly about yourself. I know you're a humble man. You don't like talking about yourself, but I want to talk about you. How's life changed from being that kid who won Rookie of the Year a few years ago to now being the number one agent by listing sold in WA?
Yeah, thanks very much for
the
Yeah, thanks, mate. That's a hell of an introduction. Yeah, obviously, last time we spoke, it was just after I won Rookie of the Year, and I was ecstatic about that 70 to 80 sale mark that I sat at back then. Fast forward a whole 3.5 years, whatever it's been, and it just cracked 198 sales in the most recent financial year, which was something that I didn't ever think would be possible. And I remember talking to you about goal setting and things like that, and you're right, I was just a kid working it out and sprinting through my career at the time and not knowing what was next.
You take what you can get at the time. You get a dog, a bowl.
That's it.
Right?
That's it. There was a bone to chase, and I think for me personally, obviously being in a place like Kalgoorlie regional market, the biggest thing is reputation. And then obviously once your name does positively get passed around, it compounds pretty quickly. I grew second year, jumped up by around 20% in terms of the number of sales, and then from there went to 160 and then up to almost 200. So my biggest thing in Cal has always been try and be the most relatable agent out there, whether I'm dealing with the young first home buyer, the investor from over east that doesn't know the first thing about the gold pit, or the aging demographic that are now sticking around in town. I do try and approach real estate from an ignorance is bliss mentality and try to advertise that as much as possible. I don't try to be smarter than the next bloke that walks in the door or anything like that. I find that there is a bit of a stigma in the regional market where people do get their back up a little bit about agents that try to know too much or pretend to know too much. And I feel advertising that ignorance in some ways does help build rapport, and it's been something that I've hung my hat on a little bit, and I feel like it's helped me grow really quickly over that 3 to 4 year period.
I think it's humility, but I also think it's hard to be humble when you are selling more than half of the properties in the suburb every year, and by virtue of that, more than anyone else in the whole state. Kalgoorlie's a famous town, but it's not a massive town. There are 4,000 people in the place. And so when you're selling 200 properties a year in a place where there's 4,000 people, you're touching a lot of people in that town every year, aren't you? Yeah,
it's difficult. And I think the biggest thing that I've found with having the market share, like our office is very busy, and obviously other offices are also doing some good numbers. We've really grabbed a good market share over that last 3 to 4 year period. And I've tried to have our team operating in a way that we, whether it is that first home buyer or the aging demographic that's now sticking around or the investor from over east, we know how to tackle all parts of the market. My workload is obviously at a point now that I never thought it would get to, and I'm managing that as we go. I've mentioned to you before we logged on that I've just taken on an assistant for the first time about 4 to 5 months ago, and obviously that's changed things for me drastically, both personally and professionally.
But I think we want to wind it back for a second. There are a number of agents out there, and I would say this is more than 2/3 of the agents in WA who would sell less than 30 properties a year, let alone 190. What's life like for you selling 4 properties a week, every week, all year? What do you do on a daily basis to achieve that? How do you manage your time? How do you manage your relationships? You speak about, obviously, building trust and relationships. Really hard to do that when you're not getting back to people on the phone within a couple of hours because you have 190 people to talk to.
Correct. And I'll be completely upfront. It's not easy. And I probably opened my eyes a little bit. I went along to ARIC conference last year, and not many agents got up there and talked about just the importance of hard work, and it's not easy, and it's not just a show, and real estate being nice clothes and selling nice houses. I'm at the office at 6:30 every day, and I don't finish until 5:30, 6 o'clock every night. And that is 5 days a week, and then on weekends, 1 day a week as well. The workload is something to get used to. I started that way back in my first year when I was Rookie of the Year. I was still doing very similar hours back then, obviously without the workload that was required then, but the hours were still there. The habit just kept going. And then I feel like because that's been consistent with me and people then had that level of response because I was always available to them, that, like I said, that compounding reputation and then obviously referral base just grew drastically pretty quickly. My biggest thing, mate, is just consistency. You cannot be a selling rep in a market like Kalgoorlie where people are inquiring so incredibly consistently, and then obviously holding the listing stock that I do currently. You can't be slack. It doesn't allow for it. My index of whether I am ticking what I want to or not is 4 listings a week, which sounds ridiculous, and some people listening go, that's just unheard of. But if I'm not doing 8 to 12 appraisals and getting 4 listings done per week, then it's not a good week for me.
Yeah.
The selling part of the job obviously comes second because list to exist is the mentality. And if I'm not getting that done, then therefore that week hasn't been what it was meant to be. And that's been consistent for me now for a while there.
The theme that I'm getting out of this is there is no real magic sauce here. It's old school, do the right thing by people, front up, and more important than anything, which I think I've noticed separates the best from the rest, is, as you said, that consistent hard work. It's not hard work for a few months. It's not the cyclical work for a month to get listings and then stop working and sell those things and then start again, which I see a lot of agents do. It's every single day rocking up earlier than the other person and getting to appraisal opportunity before the other person. And if you do the right thing by people, they're probably not going to bother asking the second guy to rock up anyway.
That's it. And it all falls into place once you do have those systems set up. I feel like when you're consistently having the conversations about the market and what's happening and pricing and strategies and things like that, it tends to roll off the tongue. Some agents are happy with having the conversation 2 to 3 times a month and that's all they want to do. That's fine, but it really doesn't then kick into place when you do walk into an appraisal and you have to think about that type of property and that strategy. For me, it's now second nature because of that workload and the consistency of how.
There's got to be some ambition behind that humility. Is it easy to be ambitious outside of Kalgoorlie? When you're the number one agent in WA, it's obviously belies the fact that it's in Kalgoorlie specifically, really, that you're achieving that. Can you, and do you even want to, expand that presence outside of the town? Yeah,
it's a question that I constantly get asked, and if you ask my girlfriend, she'd probably want to be relocating to Perth at some point, but it's been something I have thought about. I've been loving being in Kalgoorlie and selling in Kalgoorlie. I grew up there, obviously moved to Perth when I was 13 or so, then went back 5 or 6 years ago, but I never actually thought that I could do it down in Perth, and that was a genuine thought that I had for a long time, probably the last 2 years, and getting up there in the listing numbers. I'm well aware that it is high listing stock, but the price point and the type of product that I'm selling is very different. But it has instilled a little bit more confidence in me that one day the time arose and I had to relocate. There is a bit more confidence behind me now. Is it on the cards? Probably not for the foreseeable. But at some point, there will be a bit of a relocation in terms of trying to expand myself.
Family as well.
And family, yeah, obviously. It's on the cards. Like I said, early days, it was just a confidence thing. And I did not think it would be possible or I could hack it down to market. But obviously, as time goes on and experience builds, it does start to become a bit more of a real thing.
So let's have a chat about Kalgoorlie then. Let's talk about that story, because you've really lived from Rookie of the Year to now where you are in the market across WA. You've just ridden that wave. You've jumped on the surfboard at the perfect time, really.
Yeah.
And have benefited not only from your own skill set and hard work, but obviously from the growth of Kalgoorlie's market too. I think you'd be just as open to say that if Kalgoorlie was going the other way, it's highly unlikely you'd have 190 properties to sell in a year 100%. In the first place.
Yeah.
But you make your own luck and then you fill the rest in with the luck that comes towards you. Now, that story is one where prices in Kalgoorlie have essentially doubled since COVID. And there are a lot of suburbs in Perth which has done the same thing. So it's not unique in that sense. But given it's such a closed-in market with less than 4,000 people in it and a median house price that now sits around 400 grand,
yeah,
there's always that risk being a cyclical one industry town that this could be it. And so everyone acts in a similar way to what Port Hedland does as well, and to an extent Karratha. What's your experience been, if you can characterise that journey of what it was like selling property in your first year to what it's like selling property now? Who are the buyers? Who are the sellers? What are the dynamics?
Yeah, obviously you've hit on the head. The median house price of $400K is incredibly affordable for Western Australia at the moment. So that's the first point. Obviously the investor market has grown incredibly, and my first conversation with every investor that calls me and they ask me about this suburb in particular within the town of Kalgoorlie Boulder and what's the average growth per year and what do I think is going to happen in 3 or 4 years, and my response is the same every time. I said, you invest in a place like Kalgoorlie to assist with your cash flow and for yield perspective. Do not buy here if you are expecting a 6 to 10% capital growth every year. I don't want to be pulling wool over people's eyes that it's going to be something that's going to go on for 20 years and consistently grow that way. Kalgoorlie is a cash flow rental yield investment. The fact that there's been great capital growth in the last 3 to 5 years is great, but my response to investors that have asked that question over the last 2 years in particular has always remained the same. People are making great money buying and selling 18 months to 2 years later, but my response is always a cash flow thing. And that's where that initial growth came from. I think when interest rates went up, people were looking for a bit of cash relief. They might have owned investment properties elsewhere in more expensive markets and couldn't afford to keep those payments going. Buying in a place like Kalgoorlie, they could pick up something for $350K. It made them $100 a week in positive cash flow. That then helped them hold the property in regional New South Wales, wherever it might have been. Interest rates probably helped Kalgoorlie. From a local perspective, obviously wages are a lot higher being a mining town. Interest rates really don't make a huge difference for us. But obviously the rise has actually helped us because we've had that investment come from elsewhere for people that are just wanting to help themselves from a week-to-week cash flow basis.
It's still a gold story.
It is.
I mean, the gold price is the number one reason why we have such sustained investment. And when you're buying into Kalgoorlie property, you're essentially buying gold.
Yeah, you may as well buy Northern Star shares.
Yeah.
And I think people often ask the question, I try to stay in my lane as much as I can when people do ask me about how long's a super pit got left in it and what sort of contracts are being signed around town and whatnot. I do advertise that people need to do their own due diligence with it because I don't pretend to be a mining expert because I'm far from it. The investment in Kalgoorlie Boulder property is gold-based. We have seen that cycle repeat 3, 4, 5 times over where we have a really great period of growth property-wise. And then obviously things do start to go backwards. The only difference this time is that the rest of Western Australia property prices are going gangbusters as well. I don't know if that craze will continue to help us when mining does slow potentially. People might still be looking to Kalgoorlie from a property perspective, but it's very hard to say. There's lots of moving parts. It's mining camps versus residential and things like that. There's lots of parts going on, but for the first time, the rest of Western Australia, the property markets elsewhere are doing what they're doing, and I think it's helping us, and we're just riding the coattails of that as well.
So 3 years ago, you've got a median house price in Kalgoorlie on the market.
Yeah.
You get 10 people through the door.
If I'm lucky.
If you're lucky, let's assume that you did at the time. What was the makeup of those 10 people? Can you characterise 3 of them were investors, 4 of them were XY? They were from this town, they were from this part of the country. What did that look like 3 years ago?
Yeah, 3 years ago, all local. You might have had the odd investor that was trying to get ahead of things and maybe dip their toes from afar. But in terms of the buyer market back then, it was just all local. We weren't pre-recording video walkthroughs or anything like that to have links to send investors from elsewhere. We were living dinosaur age, and whoever walked in the door was the person that bought it, and that was it. That's obviously changed now, and therefore prices are benefiting from that. But that market 3 or 4 years ago was a very hands-on sale, and you had to be doing 2 to 3 home opens or public openings per week to get the people in the door to then sell the property. These days, it's a faster process, and obviously we are able to lean on different parts of the market for interest. But yeah, I'd say the biggest thing has just been, it's not just mum and dad or the first home buyer or the ageing population that's now sticking around that's walking in the door. These days, there's a whole other dynamic to it.
So are they East Coast investors buying gold? Are they WA investors?
It's mainly eastern states that I'm finding, which has been eventful in itself, just trying to explain.
And that's sustained? That's still happening this week?
It is, yeah. Probably more so the last 6 months, I've felt more people from Perth come in as well. as you've seen Perth prices do what they do in the southwest and whatnot, people are still looking to buy some property in WA, and Kalgoorlie is affordable for that. The last 6 months there has been a rise in Perth investment, but the eastern states are still the ones leading the way.
Okay. You mentioned just then that people are sticking around. Is there a compounding situation there? In Perth, for example, given the fact there's so few listings and it's so hard for people to downsize, people are not bringing their property on the market because they have nowhere to go. Is there a similar story in Kalgoorlie, or is it nuanced?
This is the biggest issue I find in town at the moment, and I feel for the people that are in this situation, but forever and a day previously, you could live in a nice big brick 4x2 in Kalgoorlie that might have been worth 500, 600, 700,000, and that's a really nice house in town. You could have sold that property up when you're semi-retirement or retiring and moved down to Perth and bought something at 8, 9 or whatever it might have been, 100,000, and life's good. Unfortunately, the last 3 to 4 years have happened, and property prices in Kalgoorlie, yes, might have grown by 15, 20%, therefore making them an extra $100,000 maybe.
Lower base. But
all of a sudden, that expectation for what they would want to be in when they do semi-retire or retire down here in Perth is gone. They can't afford that 1.3, 1.4 plus. Even if you are talking lower prices, the lower base doesn't allow you to then go and buy that product. People are staying in Kalgoorlie because of that. I had 8 appraisals in August last year, which is usually when we start appraising properties for people that are leaving end of the year. 8 people that were leaving town that didn't. That's unheard of. Usually for them, it is so easy just to pack up, sell the house, and move over December, January. For the first time, I've seen people stuck and stay in town. We are obviously having, because of that, a lower stock level of listings on the market at the moment, which is obviously leading to high prices. But there's also no real appealing downsizing options for people in Kalgoorlie. So that ageing population of people that otherwise would have packed up and left are now staying. There's not a great downsizing option in terms of really nice townhouse unit, villa, complex type setup. And people are staying in these nice big homes and not selling because they don't have a product that they're happy to move into. And it's just getting worse from there.
Mobility. It's the same issue across the state when you're in this critical undersupply situation. It's not affordability that's the big problem, although it's becoming more of a problem. It's mobility, and that's the thing that actually hurts people's lifestyles and their goals. And it's really sad to see when people have saved their whole life, they've got intentions to move to the next chapter. And for the first time in my life, at least, noticing that en masse, people are being held back.
Yeah.
In regards to their ability to move to the next stage in their life, simply by where they're going to have a roof over their head.
It's crazy, and I've always looked at it pretty intensely because in Kalgoorlie, these people might have lived there for 30 or 40 years, might have been involved in the mining industry, earning really good money over their careers. But the fact that they owned a house in Kalgoorlie Boulder has now restricted them from being able to go and live in an area that their income otherwise would have allowed them to be. Because they haven't had that growth of their property portfolio, they now can't afford to relocate to where they otherwise would have. And yeah, it's caused some grief. So,
what is the situation in Kalgoorlie with regards to the building space? Obviously, we've seen in Perth a near-on doubling in the cost of construction for a standard 4x2 in the last 6 years. That's obviously impacted, especially from a ripple up effect, the bottom quartile of the market through to the higher end of the market. And really, the bigger the home, the more it's impacted the established house price, even if that house is 25 years old.
Yeah.
A house that would have been $200,000 to build 25 years ago that is now $1 million to build or something like that has essentially appreciated rather than depreciated over time, which you'd normally see for the house portion of a property, right? What's the reality in Kalgoorlie? Are you seeing bricky teams, steel frame teams out there, roofing teams creating new supply? How is it coming in? Who's paying for it?
Yeah, there are probably 2 builders that are doing 90% of the building in town. And the biggest shift from when I was last here talking to you, and I think we had the same conversation, is now they're doing their own builds. It's not mum and dad walking in and signing up a house and land package for blocks that they might have subdivided themselves or the government might have released or private or whatever it might have been. Now it's all just builders building their own.
So the builders become a developer.
Correct. And they have to. It wouldn't be afloat if they weren't doing their own projects.
Is that because no one's got the risk profile to build in Cal, or because on paper it doesn't make sense financially to build?
I think sometimes people in Kalgoorlie, it's a trust thing. I think they would look at construction prices and go, I'm not waiting 12 to 18 months for that product that's a townhouse, or there's those small homes I'm talking about, townhouse or a unit, and the market doesn't realise they want it until it's in front of them and they can touch, feel and see it, and I'm at a home open and they walk through.
It's similar to an apartment now in Perth.
Correct.
No one really has the idea that the apartment is their goal, but when push comes to shove and it's about affordability and accessibility, sort of the only option they have left for a lot of people.
Yeah, I was just selling one recently out at the golf course, which is one of the nicest areas in town, and the builder that's done that has done it really well. It's got a pool and a gym and a games room. He's done it really 22 units in there. It's not a big complex by any means, but when I first floated the idea as a pre-sale and we had the fancy renders and things out there, people were turning their nose up, and the owners, the ones that were ideally going to relocate elsewhere, would turn away straight away when I would try and tell them about this idea of a townhouse at the golf course and you get a pool and a gym and common areas and things like that. They wouldn't want to know about it. Now that they went to market and sold out within a week and a half, they now want that product. And like you just said, you don't know what you want until it's in front of you. And that has been the biggest shift that I've found. It can be a shift for people to realise that they don't need the big house and the big block for a place like Kalgoorlie. And it's similar for people. I assume the Perth market now, people are moving towards that apartment spec as well.
When you think of the word Kalgoorlie, you often hear the word Boulder after it. Obviously being a town not too far away, has there been a big ripple effect in prices out there as well, just based on availability?
It has, yeah. So people, the search on realestate.com is Kalgoorlie Boulder region. So most people search the entire city. The biggest thing that comes into play there is that banks have a high risk portfolio of 6432 postcode. So therefore the suburbs of Boulder. I've had countless deals where people have assured me they have a 20% deposit because that's what's required for an investment loan out there, that have got to the stage where finance is due tomorrow and then all of a sudden the money's not there. So it is a tighter risk portfolio and therefore banks are strict on it. Boulder has grown, don't get me wrong, but because of that lending restriction, it hasn't quite done what Kalgoorlie has, and the investors are still keeping their eye on the 6430 Kalgoorlie postcode a lot tighter. So
really it's a sort of space for a much less averse risk profile and maybe a little, and not for the first timer.
That's it. I think if you're coming in, and like I always say, it's a cash flow yielding investment. Think about it like that. Boulder still has some great yields. And if the people that are looking in are looking for that, then by all means, please go for your life. But obviously the reason that the banks do have it in a different risk portfolio to the 6430 postcode is that when the market does shift and the cycle starts to dip a little bit, that postcode's the first to go. So
before we close out, I wanted to reaffirm with you your favourite part of town. If you had all the money in the world, cash, ready to go, if you could just go on off-market, buy a property right now, what street would it be on? Can you characterise the house and where it sits in Kalgoorlie?
Yeah, I might have said something similar last time I was here, but at the moment it's actually probably back in an area that was developed 15 to 20 years ago. It is now the premium location of town.
What suburb is that?
Somerville's a massive suburb, but there is a pocket of it that people would know from Kalgoorlie who I'm talking about. Henderson Drive, Matthews Way, anywhere in there. That is the Peppermint Grove of Kalgoorlie.
Okay.
People that live there for a long time, it's the sort of place where if you don't have a pool, it doesn't matter because your neighbour 3 doors down will have a pool and the kids run between each other's houses and it's non-stop. There's a local agent in town who has just moved into that area and has just told me about, she has young kids, and she said her lifestyle's changed probably more than anything, even though the kids are obviously out doing their own thing. But for the safety, the type of demographic you have in that area, and then also the overall feel of that community in that spot, that would probably be the location to sit in. Unfortunately, there is no land, and the property prices there are going ballistic as we speak.
What are you paying for one of these places?
If you're wanting the nice big one with a pool and a shed, you're now talking $1 million.
Yeah.
Which for Kalgoorlie
big.
Is incredible. It was $650 when I was last here. Yeah, it's crazy to think about it. That's what a nice house would cost you in like the top of the was in Kalgoorlie. There are obviously more expensive properties around, but that's the spot I think a lot of people try to buy into.
You just mentioned kids running around.
Oh boy.
Are we talking about the old 90s lifestyle that you and I would have grown up with? Is that still possible to enjoy that life where kids leave in school holidays and come back when the street lights turn on and jump between pools, as you said, and everyone's pretty safe? And is that lifestyle still available in Kalgoorlie? Because it's certainly not prevalent in Perth anymore.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I don't have to revert back to the rep that I was telling you about that's just brought in there with young kids. It's school holidays 3 weeks ago, and she's in the office, and these kids are just starting high school and whatnot, and that's what they do. They're just running around from house to house, the park, to the next person's house, jump in the pool, and they're riding their bikes around.
There's still a real community feel where everyone knows everyone.
Absolutely. And I think there's that sense of safety in the numbers because of the location that you're in as well. It's definitely still a prominent thing in Kalgoorlie. I wouldn't say it's any better or worse than anywhere else because I haven't really seen elsewhere, but that Kalgoorlie country feel is definitely still there, and I think a lot of people lean on that, and that's what keeps them in town. Everyone can bag the place out lifestyle-wise as much as they want, but I know everyone that does pack up and leave eventually has that little lingering thought of, gee, life was easy in Cal, and that's what it is.
Elliot Briers, WA's number one agent by listing sold at the moment, mate. Well done. Get that reward bot for the end of the year. Keep cracking on.
Thank you very much.
And sure, we'll have you back in again, and I don't know where this house price is going to go. I guess it's going to be all down to where the gold price is next time we're chatting.
We'll see how we go. Thanks for your time, mate.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!